The movie begins in Afghanistan with a group of terrorists planning an attack on the American military, who are coming to capture them. To prepare, they plant bombs all over their base. At that moment, the American troops arrive with their equipment and spot one of the terrorists, who seems scared and is holding a bomb that he could detonate at any time. The terrorist appears terrified, trying to escape and protect himself from the army. He pulls out a weapon to kill them, but a soldier named Jake quickly intervenes and kills him before he even has a chance to use it. The soldiers start searching for the planted bombs while their commander, Mason, watches them and observes what they're doing. Just as the American soldiers are disabling the bombs, a new bomb is thrown at them, injuring several of them. At this point, a real battle breaks out between the soldiers and the fighters. Mason quickly exits his vehicle and begins attacking the Afghan fighters to save his soldiers who were hit by the explosion, but unfortunately, Mason suffers a serious leg injury. After a long period of war in Afghanistan, we see Jake after he has left the military and decided to live a normal life. He starts working in a car repair shop owned by Earl, his late father's friend who raised him. After work, he returns to his home, where he lives with his small family, consisting of his wife and son, and they lead a happy, stable life. But Jake's life isn't free of worries. His wife tells him he received a message demanding immediate debt repayment. Jake explains he can't borrow from Earl but reassures her he'll manage to pay off the debt and asks her not to worry. At night, Jake sits with his son and shows him a picture from his time in the army, telling him about his commander, Mason, who risked his life to save him. But after Jake left the army, all contact between them was lost. The next day, when Jake goes to the shop, he finds Earl being beaten up. They try to confront Jake too, telling him that Earl has to pay what he owes. But Jake isn't intimidated by them. Instead, he gets angry, and before anyone can get near him, he fights them all with incredible speed and skill, knocking them down one by one. The gang leader warns Jake that he will seek revenge, and that his retaliation will be harsh. Jake checks on Earl, who reveals his past involvement with gangs and how he took a lot of money from them to start the shop and begin a new life. However, the gang continues to chase him to reclaim their money. Earl tells Jake he won't surrender or let them take the shop because it's his only home. Jake promises to support him, warning that the gang won't stop and will surely come back to take revenge. Jake then calls his wife to inform her about what happened and asks her not to leave the house, promising he'll come home early. When Jake returns home early, he's stunned by a message saying he has a gift waiting for him at his house. Jake is immediately terrified and rushes home, only to find a horrifying scene that shatters his world. His son and wife have been murdered, their bodies lying in a pool of blood in the living room. Jake collapses beside them in disbelief, unable to comprehend what he's seeing, until the police arrive and ask if he suspects anyone might be involved. But Jake remains silent and doesn't respond. Jake escapes quickly, jumps into his car, and heads to the bar where he's certain he'll find the gang leader. He enters the bar with his gun, and when the guard tries to take it from him, Jake doesn't give him a chance. He shoots and kills him. Then, without any hesitation, he takes down anyone who stands in his way until he sees the gang leader. The leader looks nervous when he sees Jake, and says he never meant to kill his family. But Jake, without a second thought, fires 2 bullets that end his life. 5 months later, we see Jake in prison, sentenced to life. He constantly thinks about his family, imagining them trying to defend themselves in terror before being killed. Then, Jake receives a surprise visit. When he steps out with the guards, he's shocked to see his commander, Mason, who tells him he's going to look for a good lawyer to help reduce his sentence because he believes Jake didn't do anything wrong. But Jake tells him he isn't interested. He doesn't mind spending the rest of his life in prison because he no longer has any reason to leave, and if he could turn back time, he'd seek the same revenge, only more intensely. Jake ends the visit early and asks the guard to take him back to his cell. This isn't the only visit he gets, though. A few days later, he's informed of another visitor. This time, it's a stranger named Ramsey, who introduces himself to Jake and says he's there to help him, claiming he can get Jake out of prison easily, but in return for a favor. Jake refuses and tells him he doesn't want help or even to leave prison. Ramsey leaves him alone and walks away. That night, Jake is startled by a commotion as the prison is infiltrated. Ramsey's men easily break in, grab Jake, restrain him, and take him with them. When Jake wakes up, he finds himself in an empty lot, facing Ramsey and his men. Ramsey tells him he had no other choice and reveals that he's been watching Jake for a long time, even before his family's murder and his imprisonment, and that he knows Jake wasn't happy with his life. Ramsey tells Jake that if he were in the police's place, he would have rewarded him instead of locking him up because Jake avenged his family himself. Ramsey then offers him a new life, saying he deserves it and that he wants to use Jake's exceptional fighting skills. Jake travels with Ramsey and his team to another city, still unsure of what's going on. A young woman named Lisa accompanies him, and he learns that she works with Ramsey. Lisa explains that they're headed to a place called Section 8, which is Ramsey's base where he gathers his team. When they arrive at Section 8, Jake meets Ramsey again, who introduces him to his crew and explains that they're a secret organization working with U.S. intelligence, with the mission to protect the country from traitors, all in complete secrecy so no one knows they exist. Their job is to extract information from their targets, then eliminate them along with anyone at the scene of the crime. Ramsey tells Jake that Lisa will be with him, so he can ask her anything he needs to understand, and she'll be in charge of monitoring him until they fully trust him. Ramsey explains that Section 8 will provide him with a new apartment and a bank account where his earnings will be deposited after each mission, and that he'll need a new alias to go by. Ramsey then leaves him. Shortly after, one of Ramsey's men, Ajax, approaches Jake and seems displeased with him. Ajax tries to provoke Jake into a fight, but Jake refuses to get violent, staying calm despite the taunts, until Ajax punches him. At that point, Jake loses his composure and goes after Ajax with full force, hitting him so hard that Ajax can't defend himself. In the end, he brings Ajax to the ground and is about to gouge out his eye, but, at the last second, he remembers his wife and son, quickly pulls himself together before killing him, and walks away. At that moment, Ajax speaks with Lisa, telling her he saw a look of fear in Jake's eyes, and that's why he thinks Jake won't stay with them. The next day, Jake travels with Lisa to his first mission's location. On the plane, Lisa gives him information about their target, a major arms dealer named Alejandro. She explains that Alejandro holds plans that threaten U.S. security and wants to share them with the Russians, so they need to kill him and get the plans before the Russians do. When Jake and Lisa arrive at the handoff location, they manage to assess the number of guards. Jake sneaks behind the building to attack Alejandro, but encounters a guard and kills him. The gunshot sound alerts everyone, causing Alejandro and the Russian gang to suspect each other, with both sides thinking the other set up an ambush. They start shooting at each other. At this moment, Lisa contacts Jake and tells him they must reach Alejandro and kill him before the Russians get to him. Jake uses the explosion of a car in the yard as a distraction to close in on Alejandro, who demands to know who Jake is working for and says he's aware of the 8th Division. Jake, not interested in the conversation, kills Alejandro, searches his car, and finds 2 terrified girls inside. He grabs the plans he was after and leaves. Back at the 8th Division, Ramsey confronts Jake, scolding him for not following orders and leaving the girls alive at the scene, which could endanger their mission. Jake argues that he killed the criminals and that the girls had done nothing wrong. Ramsey gives him a final warning. Meanwhile, in another U.S. city, one of the 8th Division's agents named Luke is on a mission of his own. He kills his target without any hesitation, ignoring the man's pleas and offers to give up all his possessions. Luke leaves the hotel and sees police everywhere after the girls reported him. When the police spot Luke, they grow suspicious, but he kills each officer one by one and escapes. Back in his new home provided by the 8th Division, Jake reflects on the old photos from his days in the military, which had been hanging in his previous home. He remembers Commander Mason's sacrifice, when Mason saved Jake's life at the cost of his own leg, which may never fully heal. When Jake had tried to thank Mason, Mason told him he saved him because he had a family to care for. Jake snaps out of his memories and goes to a bar, where Lisa joins him. He asks her about Ramsey. Lisa explains that Ramsey is mysterious, and no one knows anything about him. When he asks her how she joined Ramsey's team, she tells him that she once got into a fight with a soldier in the army and broke his teeth. Ramsey, impressed by her bravery, recruited her into the 8th Division. The next day, Jake gets the details of his new mission, which targets an American politician who has top-secret information he plans to share with other countries against the U.S. Lisa's role is to obtain the information, while Jake is tasked with assassinating the politician. They arrive at the venue, where the politician is holding a press conference to announce his candidacy for president. Lisa gains access to the control room, kills the guards, and starts copying data from the computer, but one of the guards manages to send a warning to the others before he dies. The guards quickly move to secure the politician, and Jake realizes he's been discovered. He chases the politician's car to carry out his mission. Finally, he stops in front of the car and kills the driver. When Jake reaches the target, the politician begs for mercy, saying he has a family. Jake hesitates, recalling his own family, but then a bullet suddenly strikes the target from behind, killing him instantly. It turns out to be Ajax, who tells Jake this is his second mistake on the job. Jake returns home feeling lost and troubled, reflecting on memories with his family. As he drinks, he senses someone breaking into his house. It turns out to be agents from the 8th Division, who have come to eliminate him after he became a liability. However, Jake escapes before they can get to him. He heads to Commander Mason's house, asking if he knows anything about the 8th Division. Mason tells him the 8th Division was disbanded in the 90s. Jake then asks if Mason knows anyone named Ramsey, but Mason says he doesn't. Jake explains his current dilemma, realizing the 8th Division is a rogue group and not part of the intelligence agency, as Ramsey had led him to believe. Jake asks Mason for money and weapons to escape, and Mason agrees to help. Ramsey instructs Lisa to contact Luke and inform him that his next target is Jake. In that moment, Jake had already escaped to a city far from the 8th Division. There, he meets a child who was once friends with his young son before they moved him away. Jake stops to talk to the child, feeling emotional as he remembers his own son. Meanwhile, Luke is standing at a distance, watching Jake closely. At the right moment, he fires a shot at him, but it misses. Jake quickly shields the child and takes him into a nearby store before running away. Luke chases after him, firing shots, but Jake, being more skilled, manages to escape before he can catch him. Luke contacts Ramsey and tells him that Jake got away, but promises he'll find him and finish him off since he's never failed a mission. At that time, Jake returns to Earl's workshop and talks with him, thanking him for adopting him when he was young after his parents died. Without Earl, he would have had a very different life, possibly dead for years. While they're talking, the alarm on the computer goes off, alerting them that Ramsey's men have breached the place. Jake moves quickly to confront them, asking Earl for help. Sure enough, Ramsey's men attack, and Jake fights them with all his strength. He saves Earl just before one of Ramsey's men can kill him. Ajax then faces off against Jake, wanting to kill him himself. After an intense fight, Ajax has the upper hand, but at the last second, before he can stab Jake in the heart, Lisa appears and shoots Ajax dead. Jake is stunned by what she did, but Lisa tells him they need to move quickly because there's no time. While they're on their way, Lisa tells him she helped him because she, too, wants to get out of the 8th Division just like he does. Jake asks her for Ramsey's location, explaining they need to finish him off. Lisa gives him the location. Before they enter the compound, Jake asks Lisa to leave because it's too dangerous, but she refuses, saying she'll help him and stay by his side. Suddenly, someone appears behind Jake and knocks him out. When he wakes up, he finds himself in front of Ramsey and realizes that Lisa has betrayed him, that her mission all along was to lure him to Ramsey. Ramsey tells Jake that before he finishes him off, he has a surprise for him. Just then, Mason enters, and Jake is shocked to learn that Mason has been with Ramsey all along. But that's not the only shock. Jake learns that Ramsey was behind the deaths of his wife and son. Ramsey hired a gang leader to kill them because they were the reason Jake buried his combat talent. Ramsey wanted Jake to regain his talent and violence, so he sought to eliminate them. Jake is left alone in the room, and after a while, Mason sneaks back in and tells Jake he's actually on a mission from intelligence to take down Ramsey, so he's only been pretending to be with him. Mason asks for Jake's help since the plan has changed, and now they must take down Ramsey immediately. Mason unties Jake and tells him to stay in place until the guards enter, then he triggers the alarm. The guards rush into Jake's room, and together, Jake and Mason attack them until they've taken them all down. Afterward, they confront Ramsey and Lisa. Ramsey realizes Mason's betrayal, and the two sides exchange gunfire. Ramsey talks to Jake, offering him a large sum of money to let him go and live his life. But Mason reminds Jake that Ramsey was the one who killed his family. The battle continues until Jake is nearly defeated, but Mason saves him once again by standing in front of him and taking the bullet. This time, he dies. Before he passes, Mason asks Jake to complete the mission. At that moment, Jake sees Lisa standing in front of him, holding a gun and wanting to kill him. When she finds her gun empty, she pulls out a knife and stabs him in the shoulder. But Jake manages to remove the knife and stabs her in the neck, killing her. He realizes that Ramsey has fled the compound in a car. Jake takes one of the nearby cars and chases him until he finally catches up. Without hesitation, Jake kills Ramsey, putting an end to him. Later, Jake meets with the intelligence chief, who thanks him for his cooperation and explains that Ramsey was once part of their team but was dismissed due to his violent methods. Even after his dismissal, he didn't give up. Instead, he gathered criminals and established the 8th Division. The intelligence chief offers Jake a job, promising to pardon him from a life sentence in exchange, but Jake declines. The chief hands him a card, telling him to think about it. Jake returns home, only to find Luke waiting for him. Jake tells Luke that Ramsey is dead. Luke responds that he doesn't care about Ramsey, only about completing his mission. A fierce fight breaks out between them, with Jake defending himself until Luke drops his weapon. Jake manages to get it, and Luke realizes the story has ended. Jake fires twice, killing him. The next day, Earl goes to the workshop and finds a voice recording from Jake, thanking him for everything he's done and explaining that he doesn't know if he'll ever be back. Earl is deeply moved by Jake's message. At the same time, we see Jake calling the chief, agreeing to join intelligence. And that's where our story ends. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay updated with all the latest content.